Welcome to my presentation on applying feminist theory in primary classrooms. I chose this topic because I've been a grade 1 and 2 teacher for the last 7 years, and I wanted to do some research that I could directly apply to my teaching practice. I also wanted to dispel the myth that feminism should be taught in junior high and high school classrooms when the students are ready for mature content. I'll agree that I also had this misconception before starting this course, but as we started to go through and learn about the different ways that feminist theory can be applied and what it really was, I began to see that it can definitely be effectively used within a primary classroom, and it actually has real benefits to it to work with students at such an influential age while they're still shaping their opinions and perspectives on the world. Feminist theory can be integrated both explicitly and implicitly into our classrooms. So explicitly, we can target lessons on gender inequality, we can expose children to new gender narratives, we can celebrate all identities, and implicitly, we can create a class culture that is safe, caring, inclusive, and open-minded, where students feel safe to share their ideas and who they are with each other. We're going to do this through careful selection of children's literature, re-examining the language and cultural objects that we refer to and use within our classroom, ensuring equal representation of our diverse student population in our lessons and resources, linking our learning about feminist theory to social justice initiatives, managing gendered expectations around achievement and behavior, and approaching our students with an ethic of care. So first off, children's literature is probably the easiest and most common way that we can infuse feminist theory into our classroom. Feminist fairy tales, as mentioned by Jennifer Earle's study in Reading Gender, follow characters who are struggling to overcome a gender stereotype. And these stories can feature both a boy or a girl. Number 2 is disruptive story times, where a traditional or well-known book that the students are familiar with is swapped to change the gender of the main character, which kind of turns everything on its head and gets kids challenging traditional norms that they're used to. Number 3 is representation of all races, ethnicities, genders, sexual identities within your class books. For example, I teach in the Northwest Territories, where my class is primarily Indigenous, so I need to ensure that I have books that feature Indigenous heroes, leaders, stories, and themes. And if I'm not doing this, then my kids are going to have trouble connecting to the material that I'm presenting them with. Number 4 is post-story discussions about students' reactions and targeted lesson messages. So when I'm selecting one of these books, I have my targeted lesson message in mind that I want to get across, and after I'm going to curate a discussion that will hit on all of those things. I want to see what the children are resisting from the story. Are they embracing it? Maybe they don't even realize that it's challenging any norms. And then once I realize that, I can kind of see where we need to do the work as a class, as all students and classes will be different depending on where you are and what the context is. So those post-story discussions are critical. You can't just read the book. You have to put in the work to have the conversation with your students. And these are just some examples of books that would fit that narrative. Teacher language and cultural objects in the classroom. This is so important, as I feel in my own teaching practice, I have caught myself doing these things. So teachers can subconsciously affirm or deny gender stereotypes through their language, class culture, and day-to-day student interactions. A lot of times teachers don't realize they're doing it, but in a feminist classroom, the teacher is aware of it. So you might still make mistakes, but you're becoming aware of the things you say and the objects you have in your classroom and what they're promoting. Who are they affirming? Who are they denying? Cultural objects could be gendered prizes. So if you play bingo and then you have boy prizes that are race cars and girls that are little Disney princesses, what kind of stereotypes are you affirming there? Lots of people do that, especially in grade 1, 2 class. So it's just an awareness so that you can move beyond that. Color-coded locker name tags, having boys in blue and girls in pink. using princess stickers or Spider-Man stickers for different genders. Those are all things that you can get away from in a feminist classroom. Roles, just subconsciously, we might prescribe girls to water the plants and organize classroom materials, whereas if we need to lift a table, we might ask for 4 boys. Even though the girls are more than capable of lifting that heavy furniture, just as the boys may really enjoy watering the plants. And the language, the boys' books are over there, or boys love hockey, or pink is curly. Just being careful that with your language, you're not affirming any of these stereotypes within your classroom. Sex role messaging in the classroom. So this can be done in teacher feedback, the hidden sex role curriculum, and student mediating effect. So an example of teacher feedback would be boys are scolded more than girls, even for similar behavior. An example of hidden sex role curriculum is that teachers assign roles based on gender rather than ability or interest. And student mediating effect is quite interesting. It's actually when students' preconceived ideas about what they can achieve or what opportunities are available for them and their gender is actually affects the interaction that they have with the teacher. Even when the teacher is trying to be equitable, we also have to take into consideration students' preconceived ideas that they may have gotten from society or their home and work with that as well. Representation. All students need to be represented in the books, lessons, photos, and conversations within a classroom. When students are not represented, they'll struggle to connect with the material. Barriers. Many teachers will say that budget limitations are a reason why they cannot find relevant or inclusive materials that reflect the diversity of their classroom. However, this specific study by Filipovic talks about how teachers, that's not an excuse. Teachers are very creative and are constantly choosing the messaging for each of the books that they read. So you can use traditional stories and remessage them with feminist focus, or swap out the roles, as in the disruptive story times. There's lots of things that you can do on a budget without buying brand new resources. Teachers Pay Teachers and Pinterest is a quite promising market that has come up for resources. It's a sharing market that is actually 71% female dominated. So this resource and creation sharing platform has increased women's voices in the creation of knowledge, because it is largely female based, there are more female voices present in these activities and lessons that are for sale, that are then being bought and spread all over the country and probably world. And it also provides easier and affordable access to gain relevant resources. Teachers, especially nowadays, are asked to retrofit the curriculum. We have old textbooks, so instead of buying new ones or creating our own, we can retrofit the curriculum easily with up-to-date materials from Teachers Pay Teachers or Pinterest. So if we want to do a unit on inclusiveness or diversity or feminist theory, we can easily just type that into Teachers Pay Teachers, and for $4 or less, we can have a whole bundle of a unit. So not only is there more female-made resources, there's also more easily accessible resources to supplement this type of curriculum. Next is feminist theory and social justice. So just like when we're teaching anything, we want to link theory to practical application so that we can solidify the learning for our students. We need to provide in a feminist classroom students the chance to share their learning and ideas about feminist theory with the rest of the school or community. And this can be done easily through making inclusive posters, such as the ones in the pictures there, and placing them around our school. Number 2, you could raise money for a cause. Number 3, you could create a class feminist fairy tale and then use it to educate the rest of the school by going and presenting it to other grades. And this is something that's super easy, fun, it gets everyone involved, and I could definitely see myself using that next year. Gendered expectations. So most of this is subconscious, but teachers have expectations around student achievement and behavior depending upon gender. So Levin's study highlighted that the most common gendered expectations that they found in teachers were things such as boys are more likely to misbehave, girls are expected to have neater work, and when they do, they are praised for it more often than boys. Boys are more active and disruptive because they have short attention spans. All of these expectations are obviously rooted in stereotypes and can be really harmful and negatively impact students' achievement and also their self-esteem. So Levins designed a hypermedia program for the Teacher Education Equity Project in order to make teachers more aware of the subconscious expectations around gender and how it negatively impacts students. The results were post-training, teachers had an increased awareness of their own gendered expectations, and they had actually learned specific strategies to eliminate stereotypes from their teaching. So I think this would be a great addition to a staff PD day to have even just a conversation about what expectations around gender do we think we have and how can we dispel those and move forward with our teaching to benefit the students. Lastly is the ethic of care. So care and knowledge are an interlocking dance, and that caring has an epistemological implications and is the vehicle for democratic education in a diverse society. So basically, when students are cared for and they feel safe and they have developed a relationship with the teacher, they can then move forward with learning. Hamilton did a study where he collected data from several students in order to determine how care affects knowledge, and he found that those who had authentic care experiences in their childhood reported a greater sense of achievement and identity, whereas those students who reported a lack of care from a teacher or mentor had feelings of withdrawal, where they then felt that the knowledge exchange between their teacher and them was cut off. Students in a feminist classroom must feel cared for, respected, and safe before they will be able to move forward and learn. So you can't do any of the things mentioned in this presentation if you haven't started with a foundation of care, where students feel free to be who they are and free to voice their opinions on these topics, and only then can you move forward as a class and do the work that needs to be done within the rest of the school and at home. So thank you for listening. That concludes my presentation on how we can apply feminist theory to a primary classroom effectively.